Okay, perfect. Welcome to the Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. The time of the meeting is 6:30 p.m. May I have a call to roll order, please?
Kate Bricks.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Janie Cummings. Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Pete Hensler. Anna Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean. Christina Small.
Here.
Oh, and there's Scott coming in right now.
Perfect. Will you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Led by Kate and Paige.
Ready? Stand closer. Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Howe, any adjustments to the agenda?
Sorry, I was muted.
I was waiting. I would love to be able to tell you that to unmute, but
I was following along with my reminder to mute myself during the pledge. There will be one change that will be in the warrant and notice of election. There'll be a change of a word, and we can get to that when we reach that particular motion.
okay, thank you. Now's the time for public input. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? Seeing none, we will move into appointments.
I make a motion to approve the following appointment for the 2021-2022 school year. Peter Hill for the position of assistant principal at Wyndham Middle School for a salary of $95,994.
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment on the motion? Any board discussion? Mr. Howe, just a minute, Marge, if you don't mind. Mr. Howe, if you wouldn't mind giving us an update on this.
Sure, I'm actually,
appointment.
Yep. And first of all, I noticed Kim McBride is on here. And this particular position is going to be replacing Kim McBride, who is officially retiring this year after a long career and a long connection with RSU 14 and the former Wyndham School Department. Kim actually came to the district a long time ago, working, I think, Kim, for Main School Management and helping even with the Wyndham High School construction project and doing some of the original visioning work for that project back in the late 90s, and has had a long connection. And then with her two wonderful children who've come through, Kim has been an outstanding asset to all aspects of RSU 14. And we're happy that we're going to be able to hold on to her because she's going to continue to serve on the Wyndham Middle School Construction Committee. But when we reach the end of the school year this year, Kim will be turning over her seat to Mr. Peter Hill. And Drew actually has a few things just kind of prepared to share a little bit about Peter and the background. And Peter's actually already done some work with RSU 14, doing some consulting work, so already has a connection with us. So Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you all for the opportunity tonight. And yes, it's been a journey. Kim was obviously an excellent teacher before becoming an administrator. We've had a wonderful 4 years together, and wrapping up the end of the year in true style today. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving pieces to close out the year in a good way. So just from a process perspective, we posted this position prior to February break. We had 47 applicants. And so in terms of the process, we decided to do things a little bit differently in terms of making sure that we had input at all different levels. So various stakeholders were involved in the screening process. There are different folks involved in the round of 8 interviews, different folks involved in the round of 3 interviews that we had. Some stakeholders were involved in all 3 steps. So for instance, Kim was involved in all 3 steps of that. And then finally that went on to Chris and Christine, 2 applicants. And so in terms of the pieces that we were looking for in applicants, I'd say three main pieces. Obviously, as an assistant principal, somebody that can form quality relationships with students and parents, who's has experience with managing behaviors, looking and interpreting data to be able to change behaviors, in our favor. Two, we're really looking for an individual that had some experiences with equity and had some diverse background. And then three, given the vision of not only the new middle school, but also the district in terms of project-based learning. And so Peter really hits all three of those, his experiences at King Middle School, the background that he has, and then also the relationships that he's already formed with many of our teachers that he's worked with. Peter's consulted with us on some grants that came through King Middle School, and then also some privately funded consultation with us and teachers. So he's not necessarily a familiar face to everybody, but many of the staff have already worked with him. So we think he's going to be.
Looks like Drew dropped internet. He's going to say he's going to be an outstanding addition to Wyndham Middle School and bring all the experiences and the diverse experiences from King Middle School over to Wyndham Middle. And I've enjoyed the chance that I had to meet Peter and have a good conversation and learn a little bit more about him a few weeks ago. And I'm excited tonight to be able to recommend him to the board as the next assistant principal for Wyndham Middle School. Seamless transition.
Any comment from the public? I see some other folks have joined us. Any board comment? Kim.
I guess I would just like to add my voice of welcome to Peter. I could not be happier to turn the reins over to him. I'm so excited for what a fabulous team he and Drew are going to make. And it's going to be really fun to watch them open this new school over the next few years. And when I'm sitting under that palm tree in Florida, I'm going to feel really good about what's happening at Wyndham Middle School. It has been a true pleasure. And I'm not sure if Drew can hear me, and maybe there'll be another opportunity to say this, but it's been a wonderful 4 years. And Drew is a fabulous administrator. And I know it's going to be just a wonderful road ahead.
Well, thank you again, Kim, for your expertise and your dedication to RSU. And you will be missed, certainly, but come back and visit. Well, I'll see you on the building committee, but do come back because I know there'll be lots of folks who want to see you. So good luck in future endeavors. I also want to welcome Peter as well. I'm really excited to have you join us. I know you went through a rigorous process and lots of people know you, and you bring a wealth of information that I think will be fabulous as we embark on our new building project. And I'm just really, really excited to have you on board and welcome you to RSU 14. So a warm welcome to you, and thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks so much, Kate. I know I have big shoes to fill with Kim leaving, but I'm really excited to join the team. Like Drew said, I've worked over the past several years, and I've always been struck by the collegiality, the collaboration, and the creativity of your teachers, and I'm really excited to join the team. So thanks for having me, and I'm really looking forward to next year.
Excellent. May I have a vote, please? All in favor? Oh, I'm going to let you do that, Mr. Howell.
You need a motion first.
Already did the motion.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I was too busy catching up for Drew. Let's go ahead with the vote. Kate Bricks.
Yes.
Jenny Butler.
Yes.
Marge Gavoni.
Yes.
Anna Keeney.
Yes.
Kate Levier.
Yes.
Scott McLean.
Yay.
Christina Small.
Yes.
It's official. Welcome aboard, Peter, and congratulations. We're going to move on now. Ms. Hessler, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, will present an opportunity for public comment on the Title I application. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kate. That's a hard act to follow with Kim and Peter Hill in the audience here, and I get to talk about federal funding. So this is our annual chance to community to hear and give input on our pre-allocated funds for next year. And I'm going to share my screen so that we're able to see the breakdown of each of the pieces so that we can clearly go through this process. I think, let's see, I just want to, sorry about that. Make sure I have the right form pulled up for you. I have 2 things for you tonight, so here we go. So on the screen is our ESSA public notice of allocations. Each spring, we await for the Maine Department of Education to share with us our allocations and our title grants. This year, we are very surprised. We actually had worked with the DOE earlier in the spring and thought we were going to have some cuts, and we're prepared for that, but actually we have some increases, which is always great to hear. So I've broken this down in our intended use of funds. I did work with a group of stakeholders yesterday, and we agreed upon these are the pieces to move forward and best to serve the RSU. So in Title I, which is in our grant system as supplemental instructional services, our preliminary allocation for next year is $392,770, and that's an increase of $29,000 from last year. Those projects that we attend to in Title I include homelessness, supplemental instruction for literacy, and supplemental instruction for mathematics. So our grant program funds the supports and benefits of our Title I teacher and all of our Title I educational technicians. These staff members provide supplemental math and literacy support for our K-5 students in all 3 elementary schools. Title II, we also saw an increase next year in Title II, which is teacher quality and professional development. Our preliminary allocation for next year is slated at $114,384. That is an increase of over $16,000 for next year. We break this down into 2 categories. The first category is a project which we have had for ever since I've been here, and I know when Mr. Howell was curriculum director, it was here as well. But we have a project called Classroom Reduction Project to keep class sizes down. So part of these funds pay for the salary and benefits of one of the kindergarten teachers at Wyndham Primary School, which is about, for next year, slated at $81,000. And so the recommendation is we will be transferring the remaining balance in Title II into Title I, again, to cover our Title I services. The last grant that we have is Title IV, which is student support and academic enrichment. We did see a decrease in this area. We're allotted $36,071 for next year. And we will take those funds like we did last year, and we are going to transfer them into Title I. So after all of the transfers, the RSU will have available $461,685 to support the students at Wyndham Primary, Raymond Elementary, and the Manchester School for the staff and benefits of those existing staff members. I'll also like to remind the public, when we look at those existing staff members, any shortfall we have from the title grants, we have some positions that are, or partial positions that are paid, and they're locally funded by the board. And that's graciously appreciated. So we are able to keep our existing staff and service the needs of our children for Title I, who need Title I services. So this was part of your board packet, and I encourage any public listening that we will take any public comments. You are welcome to call at the number below. You're also welcome to email if you have any ideas or any comments you would like to make on our allocated funds and our intended uses of them. And we will take that information until May 12th. And I can answer any questions from the board if anyone has any.
Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Christine. I'm delighted to have Christine again present for the school calendar.
Okay, so let's take another look. This is the proposed draft calendar for the 22 school year, which is hard to believe with all of the changes. I wish, last year we could have thrown that thing right out the window. But we are hoping that everything is set. This calendar is built as a review for anybody listening in the public with the other districts who serve students who attend the vocational program in Westbrook. Under chapter law, we need to align our calendars, and we need to have at least less than 5 dissimilar days on our calendars, and so that our students in those vocational programs do not miss out on their programming for the vocational schools. So there are no big surprises this year on the calendar. A couple things to note. We will have a new staff orientation day in August, and we will have 2 additional in-service days to start the year off for staff, which we're really excited about. So we will have 2 in-service days. We will have our opening day as usual and have our first day for students starting on August 31st. A reminder again, Labor Day this year is late again on the calendar. And another piece I'd like to add that could possibly throw some families, vacation week in February is later this year. February vacation is not until the 21st of February, which is a full week later, because it does line up with President's Day. So I just that is one piece where I've had some people call and say, can you confirm that vacation week is President's Week, as people are already looking for plans later out in the year. The other piece is we have graduation set for June 12th. We've confirmed that with Mr. Karen at the high school. When you think about that piece. And our last day of school before any weather closings, we'll always put that there, will be June 14th. And so this calendar very much follows our traditional calendar that we have had. We have also put in our early release days for our work for our middle school and high school students. And we have also put in any of our in-service days that we also have for staff. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have regarding the calendar.
I can't see if there's Christina.
This is maybe only semi-relevant, but since I was looking at it on the calendar, why did we close the whole school for voting when my understanding is they're just using the gym?
We need to close the building because they cannot secure the students when the public comes in to vote. So Christina, when we have the really large elections and we find that the turnout's been bigger, Jordan Small votes in their cafeteria or their gym, I believe. Randy could speak to that, but we can't, school safety reasons, we can't keep the students safe. There just is too many places where people can wander out. So, and only those schools are closed. The rest of the RSU is open.
Ms. Cole?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to clarify for process purposes that the difference in staff days is pending approval of the new contract by the board later tonight.
Thank you. Marge? Oh,
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I know a lot of parents are definitely going to ask. All right, everybody is in school. Is that this? I'm looking for Christy. Here you are, Christy. I'm sorry, I hate these blocks. Everybody's in school full time, right?
As far as, I mean, I can't make that. I'm not a scientist.
Well, depending on what happens, this calendar.
This calendar is reflecting us all back.
Okay.
At the time, again, any adjustment, we're building for hopefully what we call a normal school year.
Okay. Here's my other question, because I know it's going to come up. Because we have been able to Zoom and Google Meet and everything else we do, is there any discussions going on about snow days being a Zoom or Google Meet day or anything like that? I just want to bring it out. So if anybody from the public is watching, is it being discussed, or will it just be like we've always done?
Christine, I'll take this one. The reason we were able to do remote days this year is the school lunch waivers that were given to the district actually were applied nationwide. Those waivers allow for students to be fed but not being present in the school, those remote feeding options. If those waivers go away, then we do not have the ability to run remote days. Underneath National School Lunch Policy, we actually physically have to hand students the meal and make sure that they're the ones eating it and not somebody else. And so those waivers are what allowed for those days this year. I know other districts in the past tried to do things that didn't work for them, but that's the reason why for this year. So next year we will wait and see with that, but also just underscore with Christine, you know, we're continuing to plan for a multitude of options for the fall, but working to do whatever we can to go return to a 5-day-a-week schedule for the fall.
Okay, good. I know if Pete was here, he would have asked that. So I was actually asking that on behalf of Pete because. Okay, thanks.
Any other board comments? Just to clarify, Ms. Cole, we are not voting on this evening. This was simply a presentation. So until we meet with the union, we will not be voting on this evening. Can we move on to the RSU 14 cost sharing agreement?
I had a quick follow-up question.
Oh, sure.
Just to sort of piggyback off Marge's. Chris, do you have any indication if they're going to extend those waivers? I know they just announced lunch subsidies through all of next year as well, federally.
Yeah, as far as the remote feeding, congregate feeding rules, I don't have anything new on that. One thing that's been interesting on those things, it seems like they were always extending like till June 30, and then it ends up being June 29th that we finally see what the next rollout's going to be. And I think, as we all know, what's been provided for remote meals this year has been absolutely fantastic, and that we've had that resource, and we're prepared to move forward with that should that be a requirement that we can meet.
Thank you.
Scott?
Thank you. Christine, I don't know if it was your idea or maybe Chris's. I appreciate the extra information that went into the board packet as far as the guidance for dissimilar days, and then spelling out all of the dissimilar days in a separate document. That did definitely help me much more this time around. So thank you for adding that. I did have one question about that though. I noticed that there was a tab in there that notated about if Scarborough and Gorham would be a little different on, I think it was during the month of November. I think it says if Scarborough and Gorham provide a bus for CTE, no uncommon days, assuming Gorham is open, or will provide bus for CTE students. Can you just expand on that one just a little bit? That one kind of threw me for a loop.
Yep, so we always provide transportation on our days, on our voting day. And Scarborough and West, or the other school, they needed to double check and make sure that they could possibly do that. So if they cannot provide transportation, it would count as a dissimilar day. If they can provide transportation, it's all set. We had enough wiggle room that we were okay either way, but we put that, you saw my cheat notes to make sure that we followed through with all of the combinations, but we're very fortunate. RSU 14 is always, we've had this voting thing for a while, and we've always provided transportation for our students. So.
Okay. All right. And then I will say the February break also threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
The very first thing that I did was check the blackout dates up at Sunday River. We're good.
Okay, glad I could help with that one, but
Thanks.
that grew. People were calling, and they were actually, and I had to say respectfully, our calendar needs to still go to the board, but they're like, but President's Day is late. Does that usually mean? And I said, well, it usually means that, but I officially, like, it will be voted on, in next week. But people are checking, and we always follow President's Day and Patriots Day for our vacations. It just is later this next year. So
yeah, no, it just goes to show you that people definitely do plan ahead for vacations.
Yeah. So
thank you.
I'm glad that supporting documents helped, and I'll make sure we have those each year. So
That'd be great. Thanks.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Christine. I know that's, oh, there you are. That's always a very popular topic, and I know it's a lot of coordination, so I appreciate your effort on that.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is RSU 14 cost sharing agreement, and Mr. Howe will review that with us.
Great. So just tonight's an opportunity to bring the board up to speed on a topic that the finance committee's had a chance to talk about over this past year. The cost sharing formula, and I have a few slides I'm going to share with you, but the cost sharing formula is how we get to decide as an RSU, how do we appropriate funds that are spent beyond what's already defined by state statute in the essential programs and services model. And the district has had a cost sharing formula between Wyndham and Raymond since the inception of the district in 2009. And it was last reviewed in 2015, and in 2015 it was decided or discussed that this was something that would be best to be looking at every 5 years. And so finance had a chance to meet, learn a little bit more about it, dive a little deeper, and then also had a chance to meet with a representative from the Raymond Select Board and also the Wyndham Town Council. And I then also had a chance to do individual follow-ups of those individuals, just to take a discussion about the formula or talk about the formula, answer any specific questions. And with the formula, the way the statute works is that if the board decides to keep the formula as is, you basically take a motion to say that you're going to approve that the formula remain the same. If you decide that you want to change that formula or propose a change, that change actually has to go to the voters, and they make the final decision as to whether or not that change takes place. So I'm going to go ahead and just want to share my screen, share a few slides, and give everyone a little bit of cost sharing 101, because I think it's helpful for you to see, and I think it's also helpful for the public to understand how the formula works. So in the state of Maine, there's a couple different places in which we receive our funding. So one is essential programs and services. It's a very prescriptive model for how funding is handled in each and every district in the state of Maine. Initially, it was determined that EPS model would be based on a few districts and how they were spending. And it looked at how those districts appropriated their funds and then tried to build a funding model that would evenly distribute state funding across our entire state to make sure that districts were getting equal amounts. What's happened over the last probably 5 to 10 years is that instead of being a number that says this is how much you should be spending, the state determines how much that they're going to be, or they can afford to spend, and then they back into the formula. And so each year we will get a report out on what the percentage is that the state is meeting EPS. It's kind of an artificial number because it's based solely upon what is the state predetermined, the legislature determined they're going to spend. In addition to that, we have extra funds that we spend. Those are amounts that are over EPS or the essential programs and services. And that amount is specific to the cost sharing formula. EPS does not, and I've got a slide here that will show you that in just a second. But EPS is very specific. The cost sharing formula is that amount over EPS. And in this next budget coming up, I believe we are $9.8 million over EPS, which is a number we've actually been pretty close to for the last couple of years. And in addition to that, we also receive federal and state grants, which Christine talked about a second ago. So with our funding, this is what gets applied. On the far left there, EPS required. Think of this like a factory model where things moving through the factory. The first money that we take a look at is what's required. What does the state require us to spend? And so if you call that top box is Raymond and the bottom box is Wyndham, the state of Maine actually looks at those two as entirely different entities and looks at what's their fiscal capacity, how much can that town afford to spend, and then what should they be required to spend. The above EPS, what's actually in that cost sharing formula is that local additional amount, which I think I shared is that 8.9 million, 9.9 million. The adult education funds, which is I think roughly 295,000, and then high school construction debt is actually figured out into the formula. And then in addition to that, We then always apply some carryover funds to reduce taxation. That's looked at separately as well. So think of them as different, a factory model. You've got 3 different segments that are working through. So first of all, with EPS, and I'm not going to read off this page and I'm not going to go through it, but EPS defines based on your size, teachers, guidance counselors, librarian, health teachers, ed techs, library techs, administrators, how much you should be spending in technology, special education, transportation, and really starts to define all those different items. And this formula, again, looks at us differently for what's happening in Windham and what's happening in Raymond. And that is specifically seen. This is our ED 279 board members. You're familiar with it. It basically describes for us what we're going to receive for state allocations. What is the most important part of this is, you can hopefully see my arrow, but this total municipal allocation distribution as a percentage of pupils. So when the state looks at Raymond, it says, Raymond, you should be spending through EPS $7.1 million. When it looks at Windham, it says, you know what, you should be spending 33.2 at a minimum to receive any sort of state subsidy. That's what you should be putting up for an allocation. What it then next does, and this is one of the biggest discussions that we had with the town representatives, is that the state puts a expected mill rate. At a minimum mill rate, this is what you should be raising for education, and this is based upon your overall valuation for your town. And so here it says, Raymond, you can afford to pay $8.9 million. And for Windham, though we think you should be paying 33.2, looking at the formula, you can only afford 16.5. And so this gap, that 16.5 gap between that and the 33 becomes what we receive in subsidy. And if you look at the Raymond side, it says the town of Raymond, you can afford 8.9 million based on the formula. We're only requiring you to pay 7.1. And so that $1.8 million gap, until Raymond has expenses that fills in that gap, we won't see any subsidy that's then attributed over to Raymond. And if you look at it in a graphic, here's Windham over here. Windham for the state saying you should be spending at a minimum 33 million. Their fiscal capacity is only 16.5. So that other part is made up in state subsidy. For the Raymond side, here's your fiscal capacity, here's your required spending. Raymond hasn't met that. So when we look at the formula and we look at cost sharing, those two numbers over there, that fiscal capacity calculates over here. So I've received questions from Windham town people. Does the subsidy that Windham receives, does that go to pay for Raymond? And the answer is no, because the state looks at Windham as an entirely separate entity before any of this actually hits any sort of taxation formula. Oh, let me go back up one. Same thing for the Raymond side. As far as costs associated with Windham, Raymond's looked at separately and those pieces don't come together. Where they do come together, this is that local additional, and that's the only thing that we're looking at in the formula. It is based upon overall town valuation over a 3-year calculation. And so that is now currently split. 65% goes to Windham and 35% goes to Raymond. For adult education, 65 to Windham and 35% of those costs go to Raymond. And high school debt's a little different. 82% goes to Windham and 18% goes to Raymond. And that's based solely on student count. So 18% of the kids at Windham High School are from Raymond, and 18% of the cost or the debt at Windham High School is paid by Raymond. And then going over to carryover, those are those extra funds that are then applied when we receive the budget. They're applied in the exact same formula because typically carryover is generated through local additional. And so that's done through that 65-35. So each one of these entities are looked a little different. And I just think it's important for the public when we talk about cost sharing formula, because I've received questions, you know, Raymond only has 18% of students, but it's paying a little bit more than 18%. It's because it costs a little bit more to educate a student in Raymond than it does in Windham. And again, here from Wyndham Town people, is the subsidy for Wyndham going to Raymond? No, because it's looked at in an entirely separate part of the formula. So history of the cost sharing formula, and I know this is kind of a primer and a lot of school finance that we're working through. Back in 2008, the original cost sharing formula had Wyndham paying 55% of local additional and Raymond paying 45%. That was based upon, actually, Don Davis, who was in Christine's seat for a long time, looked at what was the local additional that Wyndham was paying and what was Raymond paying prior to consolidation, and it worked out to be about 55-45. In 2014, and I think, I don't know if Marge and Kate, if you were on the committee that looked at cost sharing formula, Jennifer Fleck, who was a board member at the time, who was also an actuary, did quite a number of cost calculations based upon if the district would be continuing forward. If you were to look at if Wyndham had just gone forward and Raymond had gone forward, looking at what those actual costs. And so that second cost sharing formula, and in March 25th of 2015, our current formula was adopted. And then back here in 2020, the Finance Committee has been reviewing the cost sharing formula. And I know Pete's not here tonight, but the Finance Committee is going to be making the recommendation that we maintain the current cost sharing formula because the way that it's currently appropriating funds is fair to both communities and is basically representative or reflective of those costs. So here is the formula. So first of all, it's the percentage that's used is based on the overall valuation. If you were to take percentage evaluation for each of the communities as part of the whole RSU. So roughly right now, Wyndham is 65% of the value and Raymond represents 35% of that amount. And again, within our formula only applies to additional local funds and adult education costs. It does not have anything to do with those required contributions. Continuing on, this formula, we're making the recommendation, or I should say finance, it's not me, it's finance that's making the recommendation that Raymond continue to pay for that percentage of Wyndham High School based upon the percentage of students that are there. This next portion, which is going to be important as we head into a new Wyndham Middle School, that whatever town that location is, and we know this middle school is going to be in Wyndham, Wyndham will be responsible for the local only debt for that project. However, Raymond would be paying a percentage of that debt based upon the number of students from Raymond who may choose to go to the new Wyndham Middle School. And so they'll have that percentage. And then lastly, anything that ends up being significant debt here, so notwithstanding for expenditures for major capital costs not funded by the issuance of RSU 14 debt, should be allocated costs of the member municipality when the school facilities are located. So again, similar to that major capital costs, and this would be if the district was going off on their own. So that was what was approved on March 25th. We know the formula still works. We know the cost sharing formula component still works. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. Finance, and again, Pete's not here tonight, but finance is going to be making the recommendation that we continue this formula because it continues to work for us as a district. And meeting with council members and select board members, they were in agreement that it is fairly appropriating those funds, or portioning, I guess is the better word.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any. We will be voting on this at our next meeting. So thank you, Mr. Howell. Next on the agenda are policies. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the second reading of revised policy JLCC communicable diseases.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comment from the public? Any board discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Mr. Howell?
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes,
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Christina Small.
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is an executive session for SU 14 negotiations. May I have a motion, please? Marge, you are muted.
I need a dope smack. Okay, I move to enter into executive session to discuss RSU 14 contract negotiations with the RSU 14 Board of Directors pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056D.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Kate Brooks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes,
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Christina Small.
Yes.
Thank you. We will be going into executive session and then returning back to our regular meeting.
And can I just mention, Ms. Brooks, for those people who may be watching right now, that we will come back to this particular link when the meeting, so if they leave the link up, it should say that they're waiting for the host to start. So if they go out and then come back in, we will be back as soon as we finish that up.
Perfect. Thank you.